All across the store, legacy brands are being forced to move faster and show up in new ways, while still being measured against decades of consumer expectations. Anuj Bhasin, Gatorade's chief brand officer, discusses how the 60-year-old brand is evolving on today's episode of The Marketer's Brief, our weekly conversation about marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. Bhasin has been with Gatorade for more than a decade. We'll talk about the brand's 3-year reinvention, how energy drinks are crowding the sports drink space, and why hydration is one of the most misunderstood parts of the health and wellness world, and how Gatorade proposes to fix that. I'm John Springer, senior reporter at Ad Age, and this is The Marketer's Brief. Anuj Bhasin, welcome to The Marketer's Brief.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You've spent more than a decade with Gatorade. What's something about the brand you understand now that you might not have when you started?
It's a great question. When I started, I think that I thought sport brands were a little bit like magic, like the way that they were able to build this affinity and love with consumers, with athletes. And I thought it was all about the fact that the best athletes in the world were the endorsers of their brands. And there's no doubt there's a huge part of driving connection and relevancy by having the greatest in the world, the most popular in the world, being connected to your brand. But what I didn't know or learn was just how unbelievably important it was to have a disruptive innovation mindset to drive these brands forward. Brands like Gatorade that have been around for 60 years, brands like Nike continuously reinvent themselves and evolve and push because it's what's necessary, not just to stay relevant, but in sport, everything is about innovation and pushing forward. And so the biggest thing I didn't know was how critical that mindset was to building the brand ethos, the brand connection, and the future growth of the brand too for our consumers.
You kind of led me right into my next question here, which is you are in the third year of a 3-year evolution of the brand. What was the problem you were trying to solve when you began, and talk a little bit about sort of what you've been able to do so far?
Yeah, well, as we looked at the Gatorade brand 3 or 4 years back and really coming out of the COVID, during that time horizon, a lot of new brands entered the consumer goods space, and a lot entered in beverages and in foods. And there began to be a lot more noise around what consumers might need in moments. And what honestly was happening was our consumers were confused. And there was also a really sharp need to define what we stood for as a brand, as Gatorade, right? We were built on the backs of innovating on the field of play for the Florida Gators in 1965. And as we had evolved over time, what we found as we were coming out of COVID was consumers were asking, who are you? Like, who are you? Why are you different? And what do you believe in? And so we really leaned into this idea of reimagining Is It In You for modern day consumers and really cementing what we stood for as a brand to drive really sharp understanding and relevancy for our consumers. And as we built that, the natural follow-on was as consumers understand who you are, what you stand for, why you're aspirational, we needed to remind them why our brand was the most superior sports brand, sports drink brand, sports fuel brand in the world. And we leaned into a deep heritage storytelling over the last year by partnering with Kendrick Lamar, Gatorade 60th anniversary. We leaned much deeper into science, and we evolved the brand to connect in culture and around. And that was really necessary because as we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years, consumers can tune you out any moment in time. And so we were really focused on redefining who we are, why our brand is aspirational, why you should be connected to our brand, why is the Gatorade brand more distinct and more superior, and how are we relevant in culture and driving really strong consumer connections in a modern, social, experiential way to help us kind of really sharpen where we were as we then build for our future.
Was there debate in going back to Is It In You?
Oh, yeah, a lot of debate. When you change your brand's tagline or evolve the brand's tagline, there's heavy, heavy debate. And as we looked upon, the last 25 to 30 years of the brand, what we realized is, we had evolved some over time to different ways of speaking about our brand. But the ethos of Is It In You, that you have what's inside, that we are the spark to help you achieve whatever you are seeking to achieve in that moment and that you can, was exactly what we stood for now. And so as we kind of laid that out, it felt more and more easy and clear and sharp for us to go back to our roots and honestly maintain consistency. As you know, John, consumers love consistency and they love to, when they think about a brand, know a singular feeling or fact or about that brand. And it wasn't fair for us to not go back to Is It In You and who we are from a redefining the soul of the brand, bringing the soul of the brand back, because that's what consumers still played back to us was Is It In You and what we stood for. So there was a lot of debate. Marketers absolutely love to invent their own new things. And so as I got into this role, it was an interesting moment to say, I don't know better than the people that built this brand. But what I do know is the way people built this brand was beautifully connected to consumers and it meant a lot to them. And I was so fortunate to be able to bring that back.
You've tackled this new message or this old new message in different ways. Kendrick Lamar bringing back Michael Jordan, etc. What have you found that have been particularly effective for you? And what have you learned what consumers really want when they see a Gatorade ad or they see a Gatorade message?
So it's a great question. What's been really effective for us has been being super sharp on the messaging, the relevancy and culture in that moment, and also bringing back things that were very connected in consumer minds to the Gatorade brand already. I'll give you an example. Colored Sweat is a visual device that was used on Gatorade very well in the 90s into the early 2000s. When we did deep consumer learning, we found this was still sticking with that. And it was sticking with every consumer, from young athletes who hadn't even seen it to moms of kids. And they found it inspirational and super connected to our brand. And so we brought back that visual device to build stickiness, to build connectivity with our consumers. And the other big thing that we learned, John, I think everyone else that's come on to speak with you has learned, is the relevancy of the moment is almost more important now than what you're saying. And what I mean by that is, like, we are truly in a moment in time where we can be tuned out, no matter how consumers hear from us. And to be relevant, you have to be moment centric and even culture centric. And in our world, that means being relevant in the sports culture ethos. And what we found is the more moment centric we were to sports culture, the more athlete centric we were to sports culture, the much deeper engagement we got from consumers, the much stronger growth we saw from their engagement with our brand. And we saw a distinction on the Gatorade brand go up significantly over the last 2 years.
Amazing. You've said you had a clear vision for where hydration needs to go next. How would you describe that in plain terms? And what, in your estimation, are the reasons that it requires a new vision?
In today's moment in time, in today's world, we track a lot of things in our body. And we track our sleep, we track our nutrition, we track our workouts, we track our steps, but we don't track our hydration. And what we've learned through much deeper studies is that over 150 Americans are feeling the impacts of dehydration every week. And over 70 million of them are feeling it every day. Now, that's a massive number of people that are walking around and are being impacted. Things like brain fog, reduced mental focus, headaches, slow reaction times. These are all pervasive across our population today. And the challenge is people either aren't aware, they don't know that this is happening. And if they are aware, they don't know what they need or how to solve that problem. And so as we've gone deeper into the space and learning, is right now, consumers are completely overwhelmed. There's so many different people coming at them saying, you need this, you need this, you need this. And there's just deep skepticism. And so because of that, a lot of them just default to, let's say, tap water in a hydration moment. And, we found that over 62% of Americans believe water alone was enough to replace what's lost in your sweat. And scientifically, that's not true. And so as we've gone deep into learning about where hydration sits today, we found that there are challenges consumers are not aware of. There are, let's say, truths that are not true in terms of what consumers think they might need. And there's a real need for simplicity in the category and simplicity and hydration. We've used the Got Milk campaigns long ago as a bit of an inspiration internally to say, how are we going to bring to life this issue that is happening in a compelling way, and then remind everybody that hydration is the foundation of health, is the foundation of wellness. And without it, you're not going to be the person you want to be, no matter your moment. And that's really where it came from, of how we were thinking about the future of hydration. Because if we do it correctly, we can create positive health outcomes for consumers. We can help them navigate a really complex moment, and we can solve needs that they didn't know they had, but they are going to find out about in the next few years.
Okay, let's move a little bit on to sort of the larger beverage market, if we will. There's been a lot of challenger brands coming up in the space. What has Gatorade learned from them?
Well, the amount of new brands that have launched over the last 5 years, I think there's almost 70% more trademarks in what we would call the functional hydration world. When we look at hydration, we're looking across sports drinks, water, enhancers, and really looking at the broader set that consumers might consider. I think what we have learned first and foremost is we needed to rapidly evolve how we were showing up in culture, how we're showing up in the social and creator universe. Our influencer model on Gatorade is an incredibly complex and wonderful thing of how we work to educate and build connection with our consumers, from how we are connected with pro athletes to strength trainers and nutritionists, all the way down to how we show up and educate consumers in person. But what we really learned was that we need to change our footprint and evolve so that we can educate in the social and digital universe in compelling and connected ways. And we needed to really recreate those connections with consumers in a compelling way. And that was something we really spent a lot of time on the last few years. And we're really proud of our evolution. With our new social and culture strategy, we've increased our social engagement just over the last year over 200%. And our social share of voice has gone up, but really it's about consumers being wanting to be connected to us, and then being trusting that what we say is something that they can believe. And to do that, we've also pivoted our athlete. So like athletes used to be people that showed up in Gatorade commercials, and they still are, but athletes are so much more. They are people that help us pioneer and develop the innovations we have. They are individuals that we're bringing into the Gatorade Sports Science Institute that we're actually helping develop new solutions for them. And they are credible voices that when they talk about what is needed, consumers listen. Consumers don't really follow brands, they follow people. And for us, we need the right people in the right moments to be able to speak about what consumers need.
Interesting. So how about a little bit wider category look? How do you view the growth of fitness focused energy drinks? And do you see those brands as competitors, complements, something else? And I know that Gatorade had a fast twitch in there. So where do you see all this kind of working out in the big picture?
It's a really unique question in this moment in time, because the idea of energy in fitness and energy in sport is absolutely something every active individual needs. And you might need a different kind of energy in a different moment, depending on who you are. And I'll say, if we step back for a second, what we've learned is every active body is different. Your sweat type is different than my sweat type. Your fuel burn rate, your carbohydrate burn rate is different than my burn rate. And additionally, there are real performance benefits to certain ingredients like caffeine and other ones that can help with athletic performance or fitness performance when consumed in the right way before a active occasion. And so at PepsiCo, we have a number of brands across this energy space. We have a pretty close partnership with Celsius as well. And we are building solutions of our own, because we want to make sure athletes are consuming the right things they need, active people are consuming the right things they need in the right moment. And we also want to make sure the right individuals are consuming them, meaning if it's a higher caffeine product, it should not be for anyone under the age of 18. And if it's a more natural product without caffeine, then it certainly could be. And so we see it as category driving, and more competitors, more friendly brands launching can only be better to drive more awareness of the problems that consumers might be having and the needs they have in the future.
Is there a tension between kind of balancing your products between like elite performance or connecting with sort of a broader audience that would just want to have something to drink?
Absolutely. That is the tension every marketer faces in every brand in the world, no matter the moment in time. I can't imagine there's someone that you've spoken with that does what I do, that has shared we don't have an aspirational views target that we seek to then halo out more broadly. And the best, brands in the world do that really well. And so for us, we are credible because the greatest athletes in the world and the most competitive athletes in the world choose Gatorade. And they choose it because of the science, because of the trust, and because we have a broad range of solutions to make them the best in that moment. Now, if you then step back further and you say, well, how is that relevant to the broader population? Well, the majority of the US population is actually active. Now, do they need exactly what a pro athlete needs? No, but they certainly need more than water a lot of the time. And where we've found our sweet spot is in expanding our portfolio of hydration offerings and even fuel offerings much more broadly to meet different consumers' needs in different moments for where they're at. Because if you are active, if you are sweating, you need quite often more than water. And we want to help you know what you need and deliver upon that. So what we found is the two can be very symbiotic. If we can be credible due to what we do with our most elite athletes, and then be relevant for the broader population by having solutions that are relevant for much broader moments.
Okay. Why don't you give us a few things that we're going to see out of Gatorade in 2026?
Well, you mentioned the evolution of hydration. And in 2026, we are going to be launching the Gatorade Advanced Hydration System. And we are going to be reimagining and evolving how consumers think about hydration and what they might need. I already shared with you the really clear lack of proper hydration in moments for consumers. And what we are going to be doing in 2026 is showcasing a new range of solutions that are very simple for consumers to navigate. We are going to be debuting the advanced hydration system that hydrates you faster and hydrates you longer than water for different moments and different solutions. We are going to deliver new innovation. We are going to segment our portfolio that is super simple and clear for consumers. In the testing we've done, we found that understanding better than water, faster than water, longer than water is super simple, super clear, easy to navigate. They trust the message from Gatorade. And it's our opportunity to not only bring the light challenge, but bring to market all the new solutions.
Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left here. What's one lesson from Gatorade that our listeners could take away and apply to their own brands?
I think this idea of constantly reinventing yourself is the most important thing. We've tried lots of innovations, tried lots of new things that haven't worked, but we've also then launched a lot that have. And if we were scared of failure, we would never do all of that. And sometimes you have to be willing to even cannibalize yourself for the greater future. And so we're really working hard and instilling that in our culture, being disruptive, thinking differently, being willing to fail. And that for us has really helped us stay relevant and stay evolving. And it's going to be something that's at our foundation as we go forward.
Be disruptive, be different, be relevant.
You got it.
That's our lesson for 2026. All right, Anuj, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate having you.
Thank you, John.
That was Anuj Bhasin, Chief Brand Officer at Gatorade. And I'm John Springer, Senior Reporter at Ad Age. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Ciardio, and remind you that you can subscribe to the Marketer's Brief wherever you get your podcasts. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.